Hi everyone, I'm Johari Shuck and I'm with Your Black Education. And we have conversations with educators from across the country who are passionate about helping to educate our children. So today we have as our guest a seasoned teacher, Mr. Ola Alabi, who is currently a special education teacher out of Brooklyn, New York. And he's going to talk to us not just about how he got into the field of education, but also about special education in particular and IEPs. So, welcome. Thank you for joining me, Ola. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
I'm
Thank you, Jahari, for having me today.
I'm good. I'm good. So, first, let's start with what is an IEP? What does that stand for?
Well, an IEP is an individualized educational program. It is given to any student who has special education services, not just special education students, but any child who might receive a special education service like extended time on the test or OT, occupational therapy or PT, physical therapy, anything like that. Anything that's dealing with a special education service.
Okay. Okay. So, I wanted to ask you how you got into the field of education.
Yes. It was a long day. No, I'm just education. I've always wanted to be a teacher, but I didn't. I wanted to be a teacher when I was done with a more corporate career, 9 to 5. I was a broadcast journalism major at Hampton University, and I got out of school, and it was in my brother's a teacher. He said they were looking for a math substitute teacher. I think I'm pretty good at math, so I got into it, and I was teaching, and I saw that there was an opportunity that opened at a school, so I got my master's in middle childhood education. Came to a very great school, I think, in Brooklyn, New York, and I had a very great principal, and he asked, "Can I teach special education?" And I have a great friend who teaches with me, and I got my certification in it, and I saw there was a big need for African American teachers, not just male, female, either one. And that's how I got into it. And I've been doing special education for 7 years and a total of 9 years teaching. So that's how I got into the field.
Okay. All right. Cool. So now you had mentioned before about how black children are overrepresented in special education.
Yes.
Can you talk
Yes.
about that from your perspective? Just
Yes.
kind of what that looks like because you work with that every day. So can you just talk about
Yes.
that a little bit?
Yes. African American youth account for about 14.8% of the general population of school age kids, 6 to 21, but they account for 20% of special education service children. Um, Black children are 3 times more likely as white children to be labeled as mentally retarded. They are 2 times as likely to be labeled as emotionally disturbed, and they are about 1.5 times to be labeled as learning disabled. And there's a multitude of reasons why this happens. I think because we are not represented as much in terms of faculty and staff, in terms of understanding the culture of children and understanding our circumstances, socioeconomic circumstances. So we tend as educators to place children in special education thinking that that's a quick fix when
Mm,
that's far from the truth. You have to really study a child, parents and educators, to understand what this child might need. So instead of, when I grew up, I looked at special ed as being a place. But special ed is not a place. Special ed is a set
oh,
of services.
okay.
So of needs to deal with children. So you don't just throw a child into a place saying, you go over there. No, you give them a set of services that'll help them, and there's a multitude of services that will deal with a child's disability. So that's what where that comes from.
Oh, okay. So then I'm glad you said that special ed is not a place, it's a list of services because
Yes,
my
yes,
my ignorance was thinking that it's a classroom that you go to and you do something special. So it's just like students are integrated in the classroom, but they have just certain
yes.
adjustments or something.
Well, it's a few parts. Special education. I grew up. I thought the same thing. That was the class of the kids who didn't behave. That's not it, and that's the stigma that our culture has to get rid of.
Mm,
It's a set of services. It could be you could have extended testing time. You could have busing. You could get bused to school. You could have a paraprofessional, as an assistant teacher, who is with the child. You could have a child who's in a restricted environment of what we thought was a special ed class of only 12 kids. You
Mhm.
could have a few of those things, but you can also have a child who's sitting in general ed who has an IEP and has special education services. Um, they may have extended time, like I said. So it's not a place; it's just services that is given to a child,
Okay.
and that's the stigma we really have to, eradicate out of our culture.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yes,
So
yes,
now is it where like teachers obviously make these decisions to put kids in this school? Do parents have any right? I mean, not into school, but into special ed. Do
yes,
parents have a right to request that their kid be tested or
yeah.
anything
So
like that?
So I want everybody to listen carefully because I want people to understand that no school can arbitrarily by itself put a child in special ed. A parent must agree unless they have something called an impartial hearing, where a school does a teacher observe. So here's the process: a teacher might say, I think this child is learning disabled. Let me start writing anecdotals on what this child is doing, because you can't just say he's misbehaving. Let me throw him in special ed.
Mhm.
You have to actually log these things and say, you know what, and then go to the school psychologist and say, this is what I observed. This is what's happening, and the school psychologist will do their determination and say, you know what, let me get in contact with the parent and tell them the options that are available to them,
Okay.
because they'll observe on their own. Then they
Mhm.
do what is called an initial evaluation. They'll do a social history after the parent has given consent. A parent has to write a letter and sign and say, I give consent to have my child evaluated.
Mhm.
They'll evaluate the child over an extended period of time. Then they'll have an initial conference with the child's parent. You have someone who's a school support representative from the district. You'll have a regular ed teacher. You'll have a special ed teacher. You'll have the school psychologist. And if you need occupational therapist or a physical therapist in there, they'll also bring that person in there, and they'll determine the least restrictive environment for the child. So when I
Okay.
say least restricted environment, it's more like um, the child you might say, you know what, this child can still be in general ed, but they need certain services to help them succeed. It's all
Mhm.
about having the child succeed. You might say the child should be in a CTT, which is a collaborative team teaching class, which has special ed students and general education students. Or you
Mhm.
might say a child needs to be in a 12-to-1 or an 8-to-1 class with a paraprofessional, but that is done as a team. That
Okay.
is not done with just teachers, because this IEP will follow this child with its goals throughout life. You can use an IEP to take a test as an adult. If you say, I need this certain environment to take a test, I need extended time. In college, you can use the IEP. But the
Mhm.
whole thing is about the child is possibly delayed. So
Mm.
you want to get that child to a certain point where they don't need those services anymore. So
Okay.
you're always reevaluating. So that they call that an annual review. Every year you must review these goals and see if the child is meeting them. So
Mhm.
that's the process in setting up an IEP or having a child go into special education services.
Okay. All right. That makes a lot more sense. I'm glad that you explained that.
Mhm.
So, okay. So now, once you said that the IEP travels with the kid throughout their
Yes,
career, if they continue
yes,
to need
yes.
services. So, what are the things that you have seen that parents aren't really clear about in this process? Like, why did you think this was important for you to talk to me about IEPs?
Well, I thought it was important, one, because of the question from before, where some parents think, the child can be thrown into special ed. I think that's very important that the parent actually has a lot of power, especially in this progressive environment that we are in. The parent has a lot of power to shape a child's decision. Two, a student has a lot of power to shape the decision once they get to a certain age, especially after the age of 16. They can make a lot of decisions for themselves. And I thought it was important because of the disproportional rates African Americans tend to be in special ed. That they must understand that special ed is not a death a death sentence to a child's education. It
Mm-hmm.
actually is very helpful. And I thought before I got in here, it was a death sentence. These children can't learn. This is that. I thought it was important because it's not a stigma. It's not a stigma. It's not
Mm-hmm.
something you should say, you know what, this child can't learn. you should embrace it. If you listen to the professionals very carefully, you should get a second opinion outside, and you
Mm-hmm.
should do your own research and say, you know what, this will help my child. I'm going to get him all the services he or she needs until they don't need it anymore. And you don't want to second guess yourself when your child is old and you say, you know what, I should have followed up and did those services those teachers were telling me, because these are the experts. If a
Right.
doctor tells you you need surgery, you're going to get surgery, or at least a second opinion. If you know a taxi driver tells you to we should drive this way, you leave it up to the taxi driver. If a teacher is telling you, and this is someone who has a master's in this, you should really at least take a look at it. I
Mm-hmm.
think our culture should really take a look at it because we don't really get a second chance with a child's education, you know?
Right.
So I thought that's why that was important to talk about this today.
Mm-hmm. Now, you just said that student or parents should
Mhm.
get a second opinion.
Yes.
What does that mean? What does that look like in a situation
Okay.
where a parent, has been told that their child is being referred out, and all this stuff? What does that look like for the
Mhm.
parent?
A parent might say, you know what? Let's say a child um, is dyslexic, right? And a school notices that he's writing his words in a certain way. You can ask the school for outside services. The school is supposed to provide those outside services because they have a plethora of people that they can refer you to say, you know what, this expert, this doctor is saying this about my child, and the school is saying this. You come together and you see, what's that about, and you have a conference with the specialist, and you see where this can go. You can also invite those specialists that you're referred to, and I think Dr. Boyce Watkins said it. The best university is Google. Google.
Yeah.
You can Google these specialists in your area. These are people who who specialize in this, and they're all over the country. And if your child really needs this, there are resources. And I think a lot of our parents are afraid of the money. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I have a lot of kids who don't get tutoring services because parents don't think it's worth it, but they think other things are worth it in our culture, and
Right.
that's not beneficial to our children. So I think you need to go out there, not only just spend the money, but look for the money, because there's a lot of money out there for these specialists to have these things available to our children.
Mm.
So this is from birth. I have a certification from birth all the way to the age of 2, and I have certification from middle school. These services can be provided from birth. So this is um, this is all available to us, and this is law. This is not something I'm making up. This is dealing with the this is
Mm-hmm.
IDEA, the Individuals with Disabilities Act that was enacted in 1975.
Okay.
This is law that is on the books. They must provide a free, appropriate environment for your children during the law. If they can't find it, they must find it. You can sue for
Mm-hmm.
that. So
Oh,
that's why I think it's
wow.
important that people know their rights.
Mm-hmm. That's really important. And I think that you touched on something earlier. You were talking about empowering the parents and empowering the kids. So, what role do the kids play in this
Mhm.
process?
Well, a child is a child, and I've always been taught that a child is going to be a child until they're not a child. So you really have to evaluate your children from the time they come out the womb till they are communicating or not communicating. You have to really, that's their role, is they're the actor in the movie. They're the person that we watch to see if they deserve an Emmy or an Oscar.
Mm-hmm.
So we're looking at their behaviors. And just because they may talk too much or not talk at all doesn't mean that something's wrong with them. It just means you need to watch them closely and get those appropriate services for them. So that's one for the child. Two, listen to a child. A child, 9 times out of 10, is going to tell you what's going on with them,
Mm-hmm.
and they will communicate. But sometimes in our culture, if our child is doing something that we don't deem appropriate, we think something's wrong with them, but they're really trying to communicate,
Mm-hmm.
or a child might actually tell you what's going on with their school. They listen to them very carefully and listen to those clues and Google certain things. If you don't know, ask your friends or ask specialists, what does this mean?
Mm-hmm.
Why is he always putting on his shoes backwards? Doesn't mean he has a disability. Just Google and see why. Just
Mm-hmm.
listen to them. We watch a lot of things. We should really watch our children just as much as we watch a lot of other things in our culture
Yeah.
that come in our face.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, that is so
Mhm.
true. So, okay.
Mhm.
So, what are some of the things that you have seen that parents are
Mhm.
not doing right in the process? Like when they're going through this, what are some of the things that catch
Mhm.
parents up?
They they don't follow up. IEP is created and it's supposed to be reviewed every year. So you're supposed to have a meeting with the parent. You are supposed to have a meeting. They're supposed to sign off that they either came or did a telephone interview. Parents don't follow up the older children get, because they've probably been doing it for a while. They're probably used to it. Some, I got to be honest, some educational places, some schools, they don't do everything they're supposed to do, and those people are still going to get paid. Those people are still going to advance in life, but you will always be with that child. So you cannot leave anything up to, even if you were an educator. If I had children myself, I would follow up, even though I might think I know everything because I do this for a living. You have to follow up on your children. What our parents don't do is they do not follow up on the IEP. The goals come up every year. Put that teacher on blast. Say, you know, was this follow? Was this follow? Was this follow? If a child comes home and said they didn't get the appropriate testing environment, ask them. Go to the school. Why didn't they get the? This is law. I can sue for this now. And trust me, when you start talking about money, people are going to start doing exactly what you need them to do. So I think one of the biggest things is following up. If you don't follow up, your child could be lost in the matrix. So you don't want to have it out there with a public school system that has millions of kids, especially in New York City. You have millions of kids deciding the fate of your child's future.
Right, right. Now, what are some of the negative impacts that you've seen when parents don't follow up? Because I mean, I know that if these things don't repeatedly happen, then you kind of lose the momentum of you trying to, address these kids' needs. So, what are the implications when parents don't do these things?
When parents don't follow up, they play catch up. If something happens with a child, and I've been in many meetings where they'll say, "Why didn't you contact me?" or "I didn't know about this," but there was an annual review that you signed off on the phone, or you had such and such come in and do it, but you didn't really know what was going on. And this is an annual review, but there are goals that are set. If you're looking at IEP, anybody can Google a simple IEP. There are goals for every quarter, first, second, third. That's why we get a report card. The negative effect is you fall behind and you're always playing catch up. But by the time you catch up, that child is a teenager and they're disenchanted with school and they don't want to go anymore. And you say, what went wrong? I put him in special ed, or I gave him the services, I should say, for special ed. So why is my child not this? Or why is my child behind? Remember, your child more is might be delayed. So that means they're gonna get it. They're just at a slower pace. So you gotta really be on it. You gotta follow up. And the other mistakes is parents just, again, leave it up to the school system. If I know my child is dyslexic, I know myself, I have the school, that's fine. But I know I'm having someone come in at home and I'm finding that money that might be free to have someone come in and work. Because if your child is delayed, they need double time. They need more time with a specialist. They need more time with a teacher. And they need more time to catch up to their counterparts. So you need to put in that work on your own.
Now, what are do you know of some of the resources that parents can go to
Yes.
look for money for these special services and stuff?
So the first thing they can do is get social. I don't want to say it incorrect, but if you're in a low income family, you can get a Social Security. I think it's Social Security. You go to the Social Security office and ask for benefits for your child. They will give you money every month to go out and well, it give you money every month. It's at your discretion. So we have parents. I've seen parents come in and ask for a letter that my child is attending such and such school and they need special education services. So they go to the Social Security office with it and they get benefits, Social Security benefits for the child. Now, in terms of finding actual doctors, and I can't really say everywhere for everybody because I know anybody around the world can watch this, but in your school district, you have resources through your guidance counselor, through your special ed coordinator, things like that. They can refer you to outside specialists. And of course, as I said before, the best university in the world is Google. You go find doctors and specialists for your child with that money you're getting from social services, to find a specialist for whatever your child's needs are. So if you need an occupational therapist, I'm sure you can use WebMD to find out. You can use ZocDoc to find an occupational therapist. That child more than likely has health benefits because of Obamacare or because of your medical plan. You can get them those services. Get them everything. Just get them everything, because it's available to you,
Yeah. Now, do you? I'm sure you have to do your continuing education stuff to keep on top of like what's going
Yes.
on in the field of special education. Are there any things that you see that are coming up, or that are kind of issues that are taking place right now within special ed that people might not know about that probably should?
Yeah, since 1975, since the Individuals with Disabilities Act idea was enacted into law, there's been 20 amendments, and the basis of it has stayed the same. But there's always things we discover in any science, and this is the science of the brain of education that we enact and we put into our education. Because like I said, when I went to school with special ed, I thought it was a place, but now you have children who go to school and sit in classes with is a lot of kids who sit in classes in general ed and have those services. It's not like it was before, so we're always evolving.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to always do professional development to stay on top of it. I always have to see what's going on with the IEP and how it's been changed and things like that. But for parents who want to get involved, I say they pay attention to a lot of the information being put out there by the school,
Mm-hmm.
newsletters and things like that, and they talk to their teachers and their principals and anybody who deals with their child, even the bus driver. Even the bus driver. You might want to find out if there's going to be funding for new buses. If you want to find out who your maitre d' is for your child on the bus, or your bus driver, who are they certified by? You might want to find out every person that comes in contact with their child. What food are they eating? Nutrition is big. What
Mm-hmm.
foods are they eating downstairs? In the cafeteria. What foods are they have available? What kind of nutrition? Because that's big. We find kids who don't eat breakfast have a harder time during the day. So imagine a special needs child who doesn't have a good breakfast and might be
Mm-hmm.
emotionally disturbed. So I say stay on top of that. Anything that comes in pop culture, even stay on top of that, because this is part of a child's life. So
Right.
that's one of the things I say that's important to always stay abreast of the situation with your child in special education services.
Mm-hmm. Now you just said something, and I just never heard of this before, like the association with food and
Yes.
getting and learning. I mean, I know that it's important. We need to fuel our brains and all that stuff. But is that something that like a parent can say, like, my financial situation is difficult? Like, is that something that can be put into the IEP or something?
Yes, when they do an initial evaluation of they do the family's history. They talk to the parent. They might tell you, father was this or mother was that, brothers are this, how many children are in special ed. They might do something like that, and they might say, you know what, this is appropriate for this child. So they might say, I don't have money for this. I don't have money for school lunch. That's all based on income. That's all
Mm-hmm.
based on income. So you might say, this child needs school lunch every day, or this child might need to eat at 10 o'clock every day. That's dealing with the nutritionist.
Mm-hmm.
So that all can be put in an IEP. An IEP is like the Bible for that child. I wish every kid could have an IEP, but that's a lot of work. But in terms of
Mm-hmm.
special ed services, that can be put in the IEP. This child needs to have this, or this child needs to use the bathroom. This child needs to do this. This child needs to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And that can be put in the IEP. Just about anything can be put in an IEP that deals with that child's educational needs.
Oh,
So
okay.
if in terms of that, yeah, you have those services available. There's
Mm-hmm.
money set aside for this stuff in school districts. It's just, I think culturally we don't know this because for whatever reason our history doesn't dictate that. Our history doesn't dictate us knowing these things.
Right.
But when the information is put out there, we cannot be ignorant. We must understand that we need to read just like any other culture would.
Mm-hmm. You're on point with that. Now you
Mhm.
said something like a while ago, earlier on, about like you can use your IEP in college and
Yes.
beyond. Can you speak on that a little bit?
Yeah, so I've known individuals in college who now in we take standardized tests here in up until college. We take standardized tests where the state gives a test and you must pass it to go on. That's the basis of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's just the basis of it. There's other things in play there. But when you go to college, there's different things depending on what kind of post-secondary school you go to. You if they're getting federal funding or they're a school that's accredited, you can say, I have an IEP, I need extra services to take a CLEP test, I need extra services to take my final, and they have to honor that because that's law. So
Mm-hmm.
you can do that throughout life. Not to say everybody goes to college after the age of 18. You
Right.
can be an adult and take a GED and say, I had an IEP, I need these kind of services. I need a calculator for my test. That can all be put on the IEP. So
Mm-hmm.
that's with you because that's a legal document throughout your life, you know?
Oh, okay. So who keeps that stuff? It's just like some forms. Like how
Yeah.
does it travel with you?
Well, we use a service in New York City called CSIS, SESIS, and I'll be lying if I said I knew exactly what it stands for, but I know we use CSIS, and CSIS has an online program. We used to do it, write it out like everyone else when I came into the system, or have a template that does it. We
Mm-hmm.
print it, we keep it we give it to every teacher supposed to have it. Every person who provides services to that child is supposed to have it. But now it's kept online, at least in New York City. I don't know anywhere else
Okay.
where it can be accessed. That child can go down to the board of ed or that parent and ask for a hard copy. They're supposed to have a hard. You're supposed to provide them with a hard copy, and that's always going to be in the system. And up to their last IEP that the school does, we have a copy of that. Anything after, because obviously after a while, public education is not available to individuals after I think the age of 21. That's the
Mm-hmm.
last time we address the IEP.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the last one we do. So they're supposed to have that copy for you available.
Okay. Okay.
Mhm.
So, is there anything else that we haven't talked about that you think is important? Just kind of wrapping up, to leave the viewers with when it comes
Yes.
to this sort of thing.
Yes, I think um, IEP has a lot of different categories. When a child is diagnosed, they don't just say misbehave, or they don't say missing leg, or they don't say a dramatic traumatic experience. It says it goes into a category. You have categories like deaf, blindness, traumatic brain injury, intellectual disability, autism. Autism has a lot of different categories.
Mm-hmm.
Orthopedic impairment, multiple disabilities. I, I strongly suggest parents to make sure they understand what their child is classified under, because once they're classified, to get it redone, you got to go through a whole bunch of different steps.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one I want parents to really pay attention if they have an IEP. And if you are a person who is thinking about it, it's not a bad thing to go through the process, because you can always take your child out. Don't let anybody tell you that you don't have the right to. The school can fight back and say, you know what, we don't think it's appropriate. We want to do an impartial hearing where they, basically go before a hearing officer and they say, we think this child needs, and the parent, you're arguing back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
But you can write a letter and say, I don't want my child in special ed anymore. And that has to happen, you
Okay.
know? So I want parents to know that, like, oh my God, once he gets in, we can't get him out. No.
Okay.
At least go through the process
Mm-hmm.
and listen to the educators, no matter how much bias you think they have. You say they don't like your child, listen to this. Listen to them, because they might be telling you something you don't know, and then find out on your own. Get your own referrals to outside specialists. And for our culture, just listen. I'm telling you, I deal with this all the time. Just listen. These people know what they're talking about. They've gone to school for this. And that's my biggest thing. Just listen. Because
Mm-hmm.
if it was that person's job, if it was that parent's job, and someone came into the job and they said, you don't know what you're doing, or I know better than you, without you even being able to
Right.
articulate yourself, you will have a problem with that.
Mm-hmm.
So, educators are the second parent.
Okay.
And they probably see your child way more than you do, depending on your situation. So they might tell you something you really should listen to.
Right, right. You know what? I want to ask you one more thing before I let you go.
Yes.
What, as a black man who
Mhm.
is in education, who's in the schools, in special ed, number one, you talked about it a little bit. Why is it important for people like you to be in the field? And then my second question is, what would you say to encourage someone like you, 10 years ago, to pursue this field?
I say as a teacher, you'll never be rich, but you'll never be poor, right? So you're basically doing it for the love of it. You're not gonna say, well, I'm gonna use this to get rich one day, or this don't pay enough. You really got to do this for the passion. And you know, I started out very passionate. I was young, just out of college, and it's not the glory position. It's not the Fortune 500. I'm going to be the CEO kind of thing. So it doesn't attract a lot of black males, because
Mm-hmm.
it's not that kind of position. So, but do understand that I know I was a child who teetered on the verge of special education and regular education because of the way I was acting. So, but it took my mom, who was a great woman, who said, I'm going to study my child and we're going to get this done. And my brothers and my sister had to really be on me. So I would say these children didn't have everything that I had. I'm very blessed. So they need someone who understands them. I teach in one of the poorest neighborhoods in the country, and they don't have many faces coming out. I haven't had a teacher come in my 9 years here that is younger than me. That's a black male, and that's kind of disturbing because they need us. They need us bad. And at the very least, if you don't become a teacher, volunteer your time in any program that helps our children, because we can't keep saying it. We got to do it. We can't keep saying, we should volunteer. I should do this. I should do that. And like I said, you do have your own ambitions, but I was blessed enough to have someone do it for me. And I always believe in the edict of pay it forward. Pay it forward. If you are looking for a career that is rewarding, and you don't do so bad either on your check and your pension and things like that, I think this is a profession that is very rewarding. I love seeing kids in the street, Mr. Alabi, oh, I'm doing this and I'm doing that. Or children who are even asking for help, who've humbled themselves, who've messed up and said, you know what, I need to ask this man because he looks like me. It's easier to adapt to him. I speak just like you. I know what's going on in pop culture. I know things that you might face because I grew up I grew up in Brooklyn. So I would say for people who are going to get in, give it a try. At least volunteer your services. Schools love the help. They love the help. And at least, give a little bit of your time,
Okay. Well, thank you so much. It was good to
No
talk to
problem.
you today. And
No problem.
good luck with the rest of your school year.
And thank you guys. I love what you guys are doing. Please, if you need any more information, just contact me, and I'm more than happy to help provide for not just our children, our parents, the whole community. We all need it.
Yeah, you're right. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. See you
No problem.
later.
All right. Bye bye.
Bye.